Alright, welcome back, Marshall again. So this is the file that we have created in the previous session. This is Suzanne. If I highlight the dimensions of 36 centimeters in the system scene properties area, we have this length set to centimeters. And of course, in the viewport overlays, we have scale adjusted to set the grid to 1 centimeter spacing. That's perfect. Now, before we're moving on, because right away we are at viewport overlays, we can turn on geometry and check this wireframe. Now, this was a really useful stuff, and by default it's not visible. And especially to understand how modifiers and other things are working in 3D, it's easier for the eye if you have this even in object mode. So by default, if you press the tab in edit mode, you will see this structure, but even in object mode, it will give you a feedback. Now, I use it quite a lot, so for this reason, I will assign a hotkey for this, and that hotkey will be used in object mode. Alright, so right click in here and assign shortcut, and this will be Alt E. Okay, so Alt E is this shortcut. This is only working in object mode. Alright, so Alt E, quickly turn it off, and I have another custom shortcut already set in the previous session. That's Shift F. That's the save. Fit. Okay, if it's not saved, I have to do it again. So frame selected. It reverts to numpad. Probably I had something off. Okay, right click, change, remove shortcut. No, just change, and this will be Shift F. Okay, and opening up preferences, but I will assign a hotkey for preferences as well. Assign shortcut, and that's Shift P for me. So Shift P, opening up preferences, and Shift F is for save frame, and the Alt E is for wires. Okay, so let me make sure that this is saved. Save preferences. So test again, Shift P, working fine. Okay, let me close this model, Shift F, zooming in, and Alt E will show the wires. Okay, so now everything is set. Alright, just a quick summary what we did in the previous section. Alright, so here it is. This is the structure. And if we go right away into edit mode by pressing the tab, we have different options to choose from. So for example, this is vertex, edge, and face. We have more than that. Usually we have elements and we have borders and other things, but elements and borders are derived from these original ingredients of a geometry. So vertex or vertices, these are the vertices. I'm holding down Shift key to select multiple, and as you see, as I'm clicking in these, there's these brighter orange selections, and there's a white one. The white one indicates that this is the last in the row of selection. It can become important in the modeling, but right now we don't care too much about this. Something similar is true for faces, for example, but here we go. 1 is for vertices, 2 is for edges. So if I'm clicking here, these are the edges. I'm going to hold down Shift and Shift and add multiple. If I'm holding down Alt key and clicking on an edge, it will select an entire loop. Alright, so that's how it goes. If I'm holding down Control Alt, it will select an entire ring. Okay, so that is a ring, and if I want to add, I will use Shift. So I can add on this. I can use Ctrl Alt and Shift to add another ring next to the previous. Alright, so don't forget, in Blender, Shift is usually add to something. Control is just a variant, and Alt is a variant as well. So in combination with the standard left click, you can choose these elements. So first of all, so these are the ingredients that we have. Now these faces are called quad polygons. So each of them are polygons, even if they are not quads, so they could be triangulated or quad polygons. What you need to know that technically there is no quad polygon. This quad polygon is an editing feature that helps us to create and select loops and other things. Now so the computer is actually calculating these as 2 triangles. So we have a diagonal divider here, technically speaking. You need to understand this when you are dealing with engines and games and other things. But other than that, usually we are modeling with quads, especially when we are dealing with deformation. Okay, now moving back just a second. Okay, so we are at box selection now. By the way, we can move to the front view and hold this Alt key and go to Vertices, pressing 1, and drag a window. Now this selection is actually creating the top half of the model head. If I'm using the middle mouse and going back, this is what my actual selection is. Alright, so I don't know for what reason, but this is the default setting in Blender. So you cannot really select back-facing polygons by default, and you have to go to Alt Z see-through mode. So let me go back, holding Alt, clicking away, and drag. And if I'm turning this back on, Alt Z, now everything is selected. So keep that in mind if you're not in kind of a wireframe mode or see-through mode. It won't work if you want to select a huge chunk of points and polygons and edges. If you press A, it works with the whole object as well. That's select all. If you press double A, that will deselect everything. That helps a lot in many cases. Sometimes you want to just select one point, for example, and alter it. So let me press G, and then I'm pressing Z to go with this up and down. So that's pretty fine. You can also use tweak. So if I press W, this is a cycle type of button. So if I'm pressing this multiple times, I can cycle through here. And by the way, if I'm pressing now Shift Alt W will launch this pie menu. I don't use it too much. But this is basically a way to quickly select from the different selection types. This is kind of a paint selection. Lasso selection is great if you have body parts to be selected, fingers, arms, etc. So you can contour the body. But the basic is select box usually. The benefit of using tweak, for example, is just you clicking on and right away just click and drag. So if you're just manipulating tiny things, this could be really cool. One easy way to tinker around, but you have to get used to navigate and rotate your 3D viewport around. Other than that, we have something that's really handy. That is the Control and Plus on the numpad. That is grow selection. So if you have, for example, a single face, you want to select the ear part and letter 3, number 3, and Control Plus and grow. Now this interior part of the ear is selected. And because it's a nicely created quad model, this selection is actually really purposeful. So Control Plus, and the reverse is Control minus. So Control Plus is growing, Control minus is shrinking. Now the reason we are here is we will edit this guy with proportional editing, but before we do that, one more thing that you should know about the geometry like this. It is not a single model. It consists of 3 models. The 2 eyes and the head are joined. So what we can do is actually we can separate the eyes. Now how to do it? Let me press number 3, and I can give it a try and select polygons, holding down Shift, and select, and maybe try to use Control and Shift to add more and select loops, but it's not really working. But there's one more thing that can really speed up the process if you have to select a whole chunk of connected polygons, like polygon isles, and that is the L. So if I'm hovering over an element and I'm pressing L, it will select the linked polygons. That means the connected polygons. So if I want to select this eye, for example, I can highlight it and I can press P. That's the shortcut for separate, and I can go separate selection, and now we have this eye separated. So as you see, the Suzanne 001 model is created. So we have Suzanne, this is the original Suzanne 001, automatically numbered. Here's the other eye, so let me select again the head, the eye, hover over and just pressing L. And you don't need to select a polygon, just hovering over and press L. And I will also keep my cursor here and I'm pressing P and selection, separate. And there we go, we have now two things separated. Let me leave edit mode and hovering over the eyeball and I'm pressing function key 2. So this is the same thing as you go in outliner, select the model, highlight it and press function key 2. So I will select the eye and hover over and press F2, and that is Suzanne and I, and maybe that should be, yep, left, why not? It is the left eye. Okay, somehow some of my shortcuts are broken. Okay, that's great. This is the other one, and I'm pressing now F2 here, and that is Suzanne. And instead of deleting it, I and R, and there we go. Now the reason I wanted to separate them from the head is because we will modify this head. So let me go back to edit mode with the tab and activate proportional editing. The hotkey for proportional editing is O. And there we are. This is the proportional editing icon. Actually, it gives you a feedback that it's turned on. And I will use maybe the transform gizmo now because it gives a little bit of better feedback. And select this point. There we go. And proportional editing is on. By the way, if you want to alter proportional editing, you can also use Shift O, and you have the pie menu. So if you want to make it more pointy pull, for example, if you're modeling terrain or something similar, you can use these little tricks and change the different fall off types. These are quite handy. Okay, let me hit escape, and now we are good with the standard one. And I don't know the size precisely, but if I'm start operating here in the top left corner, the size will be displayed. So let me hold and drag, and yeah, that's about 5 centimeters. So I can increase the decrease. Here's another point. Maybe I can select the opposite points. Here one and here at the top one. You can see, and I can rotate them simultaneously if I wish. Even scale. Okay, so it's not just a single point. If you're using proportional editing, it's quite handy, and you can add more and more points to the selection, but you don't have to select all the things manually. So it's quite a good thing to speed up a couple of things here and there. Okay, that's fine around the eye. Maybe the ears should be a little bit bigger. So let me go to the front viewport and Alt Z to make it see-through. Box selection. Actually W, and hold Shift key and add to the existing selection. And because it's see-through, the back face is selected as well. And Alt Z, going back. And using scale it up a bit. I had the existing selections, so I will scale the eyes as well, but actually it's not an issue now. We're holding down Shift key and remove from the selection and scale along the Z-axis. Okay, Z-axis, and look from the bottom and choose a rotation and a slight rotation and a slight movement along the x-axis. Could be great. Okay, maybe this was too much. So G, and along the y-axis, this is the front and back axis, if you remember. But all the time, if you get lost about which one is which, use this as a reference. Okay. G, and still pulling back. Alright, okay. So that That's it. That's where we are. Right. And a couple more adjustments around the face. So let me pick on this point and go with a rotation around the, no, not this one, y-axis. That's great. And same thing, rotation around the z-axis, twist a bit and grab around the x-axis to the side. Okay, just adding a twist. It's quite a lot. Maybe the nose should be a little bit back. I'm in a move mode, so just shifting this a little bit back. Alright, so that's fine. Rotation, slight rotation. Using the wheel, I'm holding down the left mouse button and manipulating the wheel and adjusting just the nose and G and moving it a little bit. Alright, so that's the fine solution for us now. Okay, so what else? This one is looking quite blocky, so this is the time to apply a modifier. So going back to the wrench, modify properties, there's no modifier yet. Clicking on the name, and the modifier we're looking for is called Subdivision Surface. Subdivision Surface does one thing. It actually, now let me go back to object mode, turn off wireframe, and shade smooth. Yeah, shade smooth already. Levels are fairly low, but as you see, we have, let me turn this on and off. So this is the original model, and Alt-E to make visible edges. And when I'm turning this on, each of the original polygons are divided in half. So, and that ends up having 4 additional polygons instead of 1 or 3. So 1 plus 3. And this optimal display shows this change in a little bit of a lightened way, because once you have way too many levels, it will be really dense to check as a mesh. But if for the basic purposes for beginning, it's really just good if you keep a little bit higher levels. I will set it to 2. And you have a chance to separate from the levels what you see in the viewport and the levels and the rendering quality. So you can even increase it to about maybe 4, and that way rendering will be a little bit smoother. Okay, so just to quickly check the rendering, we can hit on camera or press numpad 0. Oh, we are really far. Okay, that should be adjusted a little bit. We can adjust it with view mode, navigation, and walk navigation, and use the W key, for example, and zooming in. Okay, so there we are, and rotate. Okay, cool. That's great. Maybe zoom in a little bit more. Alright, so this is our figure. And if I press function key 12, it will hit render. It's fairly large in size, and the shadows, I'm sorry, the light source is not adjusted. So this is why we have this shadowy head, but this is fairly nice. So let me press 0 again, leave this mode, zoom out, and select the head, Shift F to frame it. And actually, if you want to adjust the lights, where's the light source? Where you are. Here's the light source, and Ctrl Shift T, and moving the light source a little bit. Maybe it's too front out. And instead of rendering the whole stuff, we can actually select Suzanne, Shift F to zoom in. And we can press Z and go to rendered mode. Okay, so Alt E to remove the wireframe and press numpad 0. I'll press the camera icon. Now this is a camera view, and if we render, this will be a little bit different. The shadows are different now. But before we do that, we can actually change the resolution because it's an overkill. I can actually hold down left mouse button, drag until all of them are activated, and drag the slider. So that will actually create a lot smaller rendering. So function key 12, will give me this little bit better, faster, and more manageable render and render time. Okay, here's the render time, by the way. It's pretty high for such a thing like this, but I'm recording as well. Okay, so let me close this 0. And the light is fairly strong, but we don't want to go really into the slide edition. It was just a quick overview what to do if you want to create a picture and what type of adjustment you can do. And let me press Z and going back to solid mode and hide away the camera, hide away the lights, select the head, Shift F or numpad dot, and zoom in, and here's the figure. Now we want to create something similar for the eyes. Like in the name of using a subdivision surface, set to 2, that one's fine, and select this one and subdivision surface and set to 2. So that's great. Now we have the figure and we want to add and model something to the more to the figure, and that could be a hat, like a pointy hat with a rim. So I will do that and create it, but not from a cone. Instead of a cone, I will use a cylinder. So we can go into the basics of editing something. Alright, so how to do it? You can go up here and add and mesh and find a cylinder, or Shift A, M, and Y for the cylinder. And this is fairly small. It's there, but it's ridiculous. The smaller radius is just 1 centimeter. And increase the radius. That maybe 10, and the depth should be okay. That should be about, yeah, why not? This is kind of a good height. We don't need that many vertices around, so we reduce this number to 32. You can see the facets from 32 and 12. That should be enough. No, maybe 18. 18 is a good mid-round. Yeah. If we are using subsurface anyways, it's good to keep it as low as possible. It helps a lot on the process. And this is one thing that you have to know in 3D. It's not about resolution. It's about the quality, the proportions, the placement, the idea that you represent. If you're just cranking up the resolution, that model will be smooth. That model will look nice. But that's it. You can't really do anything serious with that. You cannot deform, you cannot simulate. It's just an overkill to create that much mesh. But it's time. It takes time to learn how to do it properly. Okay, I'm done with the settings, so that's fine. Let me rotate this thing around and hit enter. It's just fine. We don't need this anymore. And grab and move along this axis. Now one thing, there's a dot. Can you see that dot? Now my problem is this is a hat and I want to manipulate that hat, and oftentimes, for example, when I'm rotating the hat and want to rotate, this hat is actually rotating around its very own dead center, which one is in a hat, it's not really good. I wish that this hat should rotate around its base, around the boot, around the bottom part where the rim is. So to solve this issue, we can actually manipulate this point. This is called origin. So if you are in tweak mode, for example, you can open up this toolbar on the side and look for tool and effect only origins, and that way you can actually move G and Z axis. You can actually move and place it somewhere here and turn off origins. And now if I'm using the rotation, then it can easily rotate around its own base. Alright, so the center, this pivot point, this origin point could be manipulated, and many modifiers are using this very own point to place themselves. Okay, I will show what to do and what does it mean, but right now let me go back to make sure that this is standing straight. So this is one way that you go in here, origins, or you can do another thing because you already know what element is, and you can use the L hotkey. So another solution, let me undo this, is if you press select the model, hit tab, go to a view like left, and number 3 for faces, hover over the element, press L, and use transform and drag the model itself, and as you see, the pivot point will stand still. So this is one way. If you don't want to choose and activate the origin, you can do it this way. I think it's easier and somewhat faster sometimes to adjust the origin itself, but this edit mode trick is also working. So leaving edit mode, press tab again, and now here's the model. I can just dial it down, send it back in, and the result is the same. I can rotate around the base. Alright, oh, so many things are just to explain this tiny little thing. Shift E, in my case, sorry, Alt E, to show the model. Okay, one thing before we are moving on, I need to explain the behavior of subdivision, the behavior of these the subdividing the surface, because that's a quite important factor, and it can do some damage as well, not just good. So here's the model selected. We are in object mode, and let me apply subdivision surface. And what happening? Can you see these little things? That is a triangulated top. So let me turn off optimal display and see the ugly truth. And we have so many pointy. This is not a triangle, but these are really pointy and odd looking shapes. So if you want to create a hat from this, oh my god, it's really far from it. So what to do? First of all, let me just remove the modifier. Or you can also hover over the modifier and press X, and that will delete the modifier. Or you can hit the X button there to close it. So here we are, and we are going back to edit mode. And one thing I will do is, here's this polygon, and I can press I, that's inset, and I can add a kind of an inset ring in here. And the only purpose for doing this is just to show you the difference. So what happens when you have an additional set of geometry instead of this NGon? NGon means it's a polygon with more, not four, not 3 points in the end, but multiple points. So if we are going to vertex mode, these are all vertices, and this is a face, and this has to be drawn. This has to be drawn graphically. Okay, applying, going back to or just activate subdivision surface, and this is how it looks. Okay, this is somewhat better because, as you see, the problem is caged in here. Okay, but because this is a pointy hat, we will use a different solution using the tools that we already know in combination, and going back. So let me delete this again and undo a couple things, and undo is just off. Okay, select the model. Yeah, undo is working fine now. And using scale it down to make it pointy. Okay, and using scale it again, because sometimes it's proportional editing is on, so I should turn it off. And scale, yeah, so that's a kind of a pointy hat. And then I will just remove this. Hit X or hit delete and remove faces, this face. And because there's no face, there's no NGon, the modifier will behave differently. Subdivision surface, and as you see, this one is now pointy, so there's no distortion there, but here we still have the distortion. Why? Because we have this underlying big polygon surface. But as the moment when I'm hitting delete and remove the face, now everything looks fine. Okay, so we have basically created a cone that is different from cone because it's not, you know, this top areas, these are not welded. So this is not a single point. This is kind of an open area. It's a little bit of a cheat, but it gives us an edge. So what I will do is I will use a loop cut. Okay, let me turn off the visibility of the modifier for now because it's easier to follow what's going on. And pressing Ctrl R is the command for loop cut. So loop cut, depending on your orientation, right now we don't have too much choice. Depending on your orientation, it will give you the estimate of the loop cut. And I'm not pressing anything. I'm just placing the and highlighting which area I want to place that loop cut, and using the scroll to increase the amount of numbers, and a couple more. Okay, that's fine. And I will slide them a little bit, because my idea is to create a rim for this. So the reason I needed more polygons here, because if at the moment when you start and want to bend something, if there is a single big polygon, there's nothing to bend. Okay, so you cannot bend it. But if you have divided areas, you have smaller polygon parts, and just let me quickly go to vertex mode and select single vertex, activate proportion editing, and even when I'm dragging and using the scroll, that's too much. Yeah, I have a freewheel mouse, so that can really speed up things. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. You can see I can jiggle with it because there is geometry. If there's no geometry, just a single big polygon, I can't do that. There's no way. If your finger doesn't have digits, it will not bend. So you have to have that resolution. Now the real reason, not just that, but the other reason is why we had this created, is because we want to select the polygons around. So holding down Alt key and clicking on the next. Okay, yeah, and using now Alt E. And remember, this Alt E is already used as a hotkey in object mode in my case, but we can go and use extrude faces along normals in this case, because it's an extrude context menu. So this is giving us options, and this option can help us to extrude along the normals, and I will create a kind of a rim for this hat. And right away I can press G and turn off proportional editing. Before I do that, and press G and move on the Z-axis and use the scale, and along the Z-axis scale it down a bit. Yeah, okay. And if I turn back on the visibility of the modifier, this is how it looks. Okay, so this is how it looks now. Alright, going back to edit mode, turning off the Alt A, turning off, and this is what we have. Of course the resolution is fairly low, so let me just increase the resolution. Okay, now this is a neat little thing, but it's still not as accurate as it could be. So further modifiers, further changes could be done. Let me turn off the visibility of the modifier itself to make some additional modeling. Alright, zooming in. And what type of additional modeling? We can refine some edges. For example, here's this edge, and I can hold down Alt key and in edge mode. So to add some details around the meeting area of the hat, body, and the rim, we can actually do some geometry trick. Number 2, and Alt key and clicking on the edge, and that should, oh yeah, number 2 is not switching. Alright, so here's the edge selected, and Ctrl B is the hotkey for bevel, and we can start making that change. And we'll actually scroll with the mouse just to add a little bit an in-between edge. And now we have, from 1, we have created 3 set of edges. And just clicking away and holding down Alt key and selecting the middle one, switching to scale and scale it down. And that is actually creating something like an undercut. And I'm pressing G and on the Z-axis, moving back a bit. Alright, and the reason I did this, because when you have something like an additional detail and the polygons will become smaller and smaller, the effect is quite significant in the subdivision surface. So if I'm turning this back on, can you see now? We have this kind of illusion of having a seam or having some kind of a connection between the elements. Now, to articulate this shape a little bit more, I can press Ctrl R to loop cut and add an edge and just slide it away, and using scale and scaling it down in a little bit of the opposite direction, and pressing G and pressing Z to push it a little bit more in. Alright, so that adds a little bit of bulk around that seam area. I can do is very much the same around the outer rim. So Ctrl R, loop, cut, slide it, and maybe G and Z axis, pulling it a little bit down to add something like that. Okay, so this is a nice, neat looking little bit of an adjustment. If you want to make this rim a little bit more curvy, what else you can do? Ctrl R again, select here, add one more, scrolling it up. And the selection is active, so it's still active. I'm not clicking away, pressing G right away, and Z, and pushing this in a little bit. Okay, that looks much better. The bottom part is not adjusted. If you wish, you can do something very similar in the bottom part. Okay, what I see here is the rim is actually a little bit narrow. So now the loop is selected. If you're clicking on this area, it will select that direction. If you're clicking on this area, it will select the horizontal and S, and scaling back on the Z axis a bit. And actually we can increase if going to the bottom and Ctrl R, loop cut, and slide this up a bit, and maybe move on the Z axis a little bit even more, and that adds some thicker rim to the cap. And just to be able to deform this mesh a little bit more, I will add another ring. So Ctrl R and click in, and that's fair enough for us. Now, of course, if you want, you can keep it tighter here, but now it doesn't matter, it won't be visible. And also this area is also empty. This will be covered later on or hidden away, so it's not really a problematic area. I like it much better than having triangles because of a single point joint like we have in a cone. Okay, so this looks nice. Going back to object mode and manipulate it a little bit and moving in and slightly rotate. Okay, just moving it around. Okay, nice. So that's the hat, and we can add further modifiers, just a couple of things, and we can go through and explain more. Now there's an intersection, so we have to take care of that. But first thing first, all right? So what else? This was just basically a subdivision modifier, but what happens if you add more? Because you can add multiple modifiers. So modifier, and the next thing that will go is a deform, a simple deform. And the default simple deform is giving you this twist. We can try and give a blend, which one is nice, and let me operate it here. Now, here's something that you should know, and you can give it a try. So if you are in move mode and you have the panel open, you can go to options, transform, and turn on origins, and then you are able to affect only the center, the origin point or pivot point in the software. And because the modifier is calculated based on the position of the pivot point, you can actually change this. You can animate things like this, so it's a good idea to keep in mind. But when you are, for example, when you're creating a mirror function, mirroring something, or any type of modifiers, the placement of origin and the adjustment of the origin can affect the results. Okay, so there we are. I'm happy with this one. But what else? Actually, I was I like the twist. So what I will do, this was just one band on x-axis, maybe I can switch it to y-axis, but x1 is looking good. So there is a hotkey for duplicating elements. It could be in 3D, it could be in modifiers as well. So if I'm pressing Shift D, it will duplicate the modifier, and because it duplicates the parameters as well, you can see how much the bend is emphasized because it's now taken place 2 times. So I will switch this to twist, and now there is a bend and there's a twist as well. Okay, let me reduce this a little bit more. Okay, so that is kind of a basic workflow, and you can fine-tune this whole stuff with, for example, proportional editing. Okay, just to understand the logic of modifiers, let me show you a couple things related to this. So we want to keep these modifiers and somewhat flatten the model to be able to work on a lower resolution mesh and adjust it and then have the higher resolution. So what I like to do is Shift D and copy this guy, but still origin is active. So move this guy right away on the x-axis. Okay, so now I have this head. This is a kind of a safe copy. If you wish, you can turn off the visibility, or you can select it and press H and that will hide away. Alt H will bring back everything, including the camera and the light. Alright, so this is a neat little trick. Select this head, this one should be hidden. Pressing H, select this head, and now it's time to collapse a couple things. So I'm happy with these. Let me close this. So these are there, I will accept that. But this one, the levels, let me turn off the optimal viewport. The levels are fairly high. Can you see we have plenty of polygons? That's too much for basic editing. So in the modeling phase, it's too much. I will set this to 1 and see the results. Okay, this is fair enough. If it's 0, if it's completely gone, I think it's absolutely love. Yeah, it's fairly detailed as it is for general editing. So because it's already 0, I will completely remove this, keeping these modifiers, going in here, pressing Ctrl A, and this is apply. I want to apply the effect of these modifiers. Everything is visible. This one's visible in the viewport, visible in the rendering as well. The camera indicates that. Visible while editing. So everything is visible. Ctrl A, and we have visual geometry to mesh. And that will flatten the whole stuff. So the reason I did this, because I can go into edit mode, tab, and vertices, and select this vertex, and press O for proportional editing, and even press T. I want to do the transform. Okay, so transform is there, proportional editing is there, and I can just lift this up a little bit, maybe going in and using the mouse wheel. Okay, just to make some adjustments here. I don't like this one, so let me pull this till it somewhat covers the head. Okay, I don't want to be busted. Alright, so there's no, there's no edge visible in here. Hide away everything. We can go up here and add some twist, like increasing a little bit with this stuff, and actually choose rotate and move around a bit. That's pretty nice. Okay, so now we have some jagginess, some imperfections around. Maybe I will do some imperfections here as well in the opposite direction. Yeah, okay, it's fine. I like it this way. Okay, and then going back and apply the modifiers, subdivision surface, and crank it up in the viewport now, because that's our main workhorse now. So we do this for the testing, and as you see, the pivot point is here. We have altered the position of this, and I was just sloppy and was not looking for the back, but I will do it now. So start moving, increasing the size. It's too much, and select and move that area, okay, to fit. Alright, so practically that is it, and this is how things are created and edited in a very basic way, so just by manipulating elements and vertices. And as for practice, if you wish, you can always go to Shift A, add, let me go back to object mode, Shift A, add, and different elements, like you can add a sphere, for example, like a UV sphere, a quick example in here. Change the size, this is 1 centimeter, this should be a little bit bigger, and I can move this up. And if I want to put this on the edge, what I can do is, let me turn off the visibility of the modifier, and we can actually turn on snap. Shift tab is the snap, this is the button, so if you go down here, Shift tab, I don't know the reason, but there's no hint for the hotkey, so Shift tab, and by default it snaps to the grid. The increment type and absolute grid could be turned on to snap to the grid, but here we will go with vertex, and not the closest but the center, so everything else is just fine. So I'm dragging this and trying to snap to these vertices somewhere, and Shift tab, turning off the snap again, and we are good to go. And we can go back with the visibility, so that's there. Maybe this should be shaded smooth, that looks nice. Okay, so it's not that flat. Right click, shade flat, shade smooth. For a primitive like this it works fine, and this should be also a little bit higher in the viewport to make this a little bit better. And camera, this is how it looks from camera. So again, if we want to adjust quickly the camera, we can go to view. Alright, my record is hiding this. So navigation and walk navigation, and just carefully moving around, zoom out a bit, maybe rotate opposite direction. Okay, and just, that's it. And function key 12 to render, and there's this hidden cap, and I was just moving the light, nothing else. To actually, if you want, you can delete the cap or turn off the render option. So there we are. Let me show that, Alt H, and here's the cap, and we can turn off the render function, turn off the visibility. So hit render again, function key 12, yeah, and now there's no render off the other hat. So this is how you can save the actual file. Okay, so let me go to the desktop and save it as hat Suzanne. Okay, save as image, and JPEG PNG, save as image. Great. Okay, so there we are. We have the image saved. You can also have Shift Alt S, yeah. Alright, now that's it. Hope you enjoyed and have fun. Alright, see you next time. Goodbye.